Hey, Salmonan. My quite about 3 about Yebo, and then it sounds like everyone else is saying Yebo. So Salmonan, Ninja, much better. All right. Can I please ask that we have people fill up the seats that are towards the front? I see there are bags here, but their seats are empty completely. And then Mr. Begezenzo and your team, if I could also ask you guys to please join one of the tables at the front. I'll give you 2 minutes for that. Promptly on time is because for us, now that the election is over, it feels like a new year. Now we can start with some of our other work at DDP. And so we look forward to starting on very good footing. Sanibonani again, my name is Thomas Zamflomo. I'll be facilitating today's program, as I do with most other DDP programs. It's always open to but I hope that you'll be able to enjoy and engage meaningfully in today's discussion. Part of what we're doing today is unpacking the journey that we've traversed as a country, so both politically and socially, in terms of where we are in the country. And I'm happy that Hope Alive, Vinanda FM, and other community radio stations are part of today's gathering, not just because I have literally the talent for radio, but also because they are our conduits to communities. They are our access to the spaces, the information that we talk about and engage on these platforms is quite important. We have with us some very important thought leaders, analysts, as well as Mrs. Masinga, who was also quite important in her own right at leading the Electoral Commission in KZN. So they'll be unpacking to us the work that it's taken to be able to convene, and also now in the space of debriefing and engaging on what it was that we undertook, the momentous occasion that we undertook on the 29th of May. And so part of what I hope that we can be able to get from these discussions is what is your perspective as a citizen of this country. We now finally have a cabinet, and we have a cabinet in KwaZulu-Natal, and we have a cabinet in Gauteng, after having cancelled for probably 2 different occasions. The announcement was made and the signing was done there and there. So we hope that there's a level of stability in the various spaces that are being occupied. But ultimately, we don't have the ability to determine that. It's the people that we put into political office who can be able to help us navigate the space for the next 5 years. I'm going to ask our Executive Director, Dr. Paul Kariuki, to give us an official welcome on behalf of the organization. And then we'll have a discussion or presentation from the Independent Electoral Commission, from the Provincial Electoral Officer, Mrs. Ndumfuti Masinga. Dr. Kariuki, a round of applause for Paul, please.
Thank you so much, Brian. Good morning, colleagues. I trust you're all well and happily engaged after the kind of shiftings that we've experienced in the last couple of weeks. I'm so grateful that you made time to be with us today and being the early birds. As Brian correctly said, we're going to get embarked to the other part of our work that we've been doing. And so starting on promptly and getting the work going, and then others will join us as we go ahead. But mine is to, first of all, thank you for accepting the invitation to be here. And secondly, to thank our speakers who also in the midst of their busy schedules took time to be with us and help us with the unpacking of what we've experienced as an electoral outcome and where we are heading to as a country. More importantly, the DDP team that has worked very hard to put this together in the space of the last 6 months, in between all kinds of work. Those who were with us last week, we convened in the same room where we convened our annual media summit. And then a week after, immediately we're here again doing this political work. But it is also important for the work that we're doing as part of ongoing engagement between the civil society, political parties, and all stakeholders involved in ensuring that our democracy is sustained and our practices continue to be aligned with the values that we enshrined in the Constitution. And so our gathering here today is partly an ongoing part of our programming as an organization, working with political parties to create bridges for engagement between civil society and citizens and them, but also importantly, to create a platform for where we can also reflect on the process that we have come through, knowing that we had a very contested election, and the results speaks for themselves. The electorate did speak, and now we are into what we're calling uncharted waters, so to speak. And we have this new configurations of political arrangement, both at the provincial level and the national. It presents us with a lot of opportunity for us to really reflect about our democratic practice as a country, to reflect our role as civil society, but also more importantly for you and I as ordinary citizens on what is our contribution in this new journey that we're embarking on together collectively. I would like to say that the DDP is very much committed to ensure that we continue this kind of spaces of engagement, creating forums like this one, and uses other multi-programming approach that we've been doing previously by creating spaces for workshops that we need to unpack some of these things in a very constrained, systematic matter, and where we can deepen the concepts that are emerging now. Many people are now floating these words, GNU, PGU, and very soon you don't know what other acronym will come across, because they keep on emerging as we continue to engage with the context. And it's important at some stage that we also create spaces where we can deepen our understanding of these concepts. As I walked in, somebody asked me, please let your speakers help us unpack what's the difference between GNU and coalition. And I said, I'm not the expert, I will leave the experts to do the work. So, and it's important, those kind of questions are important, because if we do not question what we are seeing, we are most likely going to flout, blindly and just, act like we know what we're doing and when we even don't know. Yeah, so that I commended that delegate who asked that question to me, because I think it's one of the things that we want to ensure that as DDP, we not only create platforms for us to engage in this manner, but also create smaller spaces for delegations like that. We can be able to get into those concepts and understand where are the lines? When do we move from GNU to coalition and vice versa? And somebody also mentioned to me, maybe even that delegate is not asking the right question. Maybe we have quasi-coalition. I said, now you need to talk to Tobani for that one. Quasi-coalition, I don't know what really that means. I've not come across that one, but I have an idea what it tried to mean. But that's exactly why we're creating the spaces like we have right now, so that you can be able to share your insights, ask questions, but more importantly, come out of this room. Our hope that is you're going to come out of this room later today with a clear understanding of what you need to do as an ordinary citizen going forward. Because we know that the real work begins after we have now the executive set up at the national level and our province. And in less than 1.5 years' time, we are back into another election. One of the colleagues from the IC told us last week, who was one of our guests, that, and maybe Ms. Masinga will let us know if I miss it, that there are almost about 100 by-elections in KZN alone, which means they have not actually moved out of an election mode. and the powerful insight that Mrs. Masinga's colleague shared with us last week is that the Electoral Commission do not despise or underestimate the intensity of preparation for these by-elections, which means they put the same effort in these by-elections that they do when they're convening a national election or a provincial election. Which means that you and I, as citizens and civil society, also we are expected to put the same effort in participating in those activities wherever they are here. So my hope and our hope as DDP is that you will continue to partner with us as we continue to create these platforms in setups like this ones and in communities where we do function, but more importantly that you will also come out of this place with a clear conscience of your role as a citizen going forward. So on behalf of the DDP and our funders, welcome, enjoy hospitality and engage. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Kariuki. Another round of applause, please. Also, we've had significant levels of engagement that speak to the quality of our elections, and perhaps a lot of the flack has been caught by the Electoral Commission in particular, because political parties will do what political parties do in general. But there are other specific nuances to running the elections that we might not all be aware of, that themselves as people who sit on PLCs and other structures that are legislated, that they might be privy to and have access to. What we aim to do as part of these discussions is to try and bridge that level of information, and we appreciate that there are some political parties represented in this room, even though people won't disclose right now. they're not wearing the t-shirts. This morning, as I was driving to the hotel, we saw Imodoya Yamazulu FC, and we're like, oh. And then we're like, oh, it's not Action SA, it's Amazulu FC. So we appreciate there are some political parties represented in this room. We did understand that we had invited and intended to invite more political parties to be part of the feedback session. But given that the composition of government at the time wasn't settled, it became difficult to really have a sense of who to invite and who not to invite, and people were a bit non-committal. But we appreciate that you're here nonetheless. Furthermore, I think it's important to set the scene to say there are some critical questions that you may have. I hope that in the course of the presentations that you'll be hearing, you'll be writing down questions for consideration, and that when you do ask, you ask pointed, concise, and to the point. Where there are issues that you might have, we hope that you don't speak in generalities, that you are specific about some of the incidences that you are referring to, so that we can be able to engage on that basis. It's not good to just, lambast for the sake of lambasting, but we must be specific about our feedback. I'd like to invite then, in terms of this process and this part of the presentation, Mrs. Ndomfuti Masika. I think she's gotten the tech partner, was Tabiso, the right levels of input in terms of the PowerPoint. Mrs. Ndomfuti Masika is a long-time partner of civil society. Yazi, abantu bakhuluma ukuthi nideploywe nama-cadres from the IEC, but they forget that you're also cadres of civil society in some sense. Mrs. Masinga has a long history in the democracy space in particular, having worked as an activist first and for NGOs in her early life. And I wasn't there, I only know it because of the relationship that we share with Mr. Madlala, former colleague here at DDP. And so we welcome you, Mrs. Masinga, and we appreciate your presentation. A round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here in a much more relaxed environment. I think we've all recovered now, except for the IEC, who have had to catch up with all the by-elections. To correct you, you were probably weren't born.
Yeah.
You were born in democracy, so chances are you were not there. Thanks for the opportunity. We are still debriefing as an organization. We couldn't get hold of each other with Tabisa last week because we were still busy with our districts. We've got 11 districts in this province, and it was important for us that we allow them ample space to debrief in as detailed as possible format, so that by the time we do our own debriefing as a province, we have heard from every level in the organization. We still are going to be going to the national debriefing session, but what is good is that at least as KZN we are now done. Start by sharing our appreciation to DDP and the entire civil society in this province. We work with a number of entities who will realize when I share our journey to these elections, what it entailed, particularly for our province, but I will also touch on what was happening at a national level in the background, because people tend to formulate opinions based on what they experience in the front end of elections. And it's our duty to make sure that people understand what happens in the back end as well, because elections are not an event. Elections are a process, and it's a 2-year journey to prepare for any election in the Electoral Commission. I'm going to try and run through this presentation because I think this is the first opportunity, probably most of you have had an opportunity of engaging with the IEC outside of elections. And I will rather leave space for any questions that people may have in terms of how they experience the election and in terms of everything else that is happening in the media space around election management in general. Okay, I was told you press here and it moves. I've just pressed here and it's not moving.
Went this way.
Why are you sabotaging me? Which way must I point? I'm pointing right where you're sitting and nothing is happening. This reminds me of the technical glitch in our results dashboard, in our results center. So these things follow me wherever you go.
I'm trying.
We are trying. I'm so happy that it's not only misbehaving in my hand.
Okay.
Are you not able to just move it manually? I'll give you a hint. Yeah, I think that will assist us. But whilst we're waiting for Sabisa and her technology, are you going to move it from there? Do you want me to try again? Oh yeah, it seems to be happening. Okay. We're going to start by just giving you an overview of KZN and the statistics that we're working with. I'll give a bit of background, just on 2 slides, and then we can zoom in. I'm sure everybody is mostly interested in us explaining how we allocate seats, because that seems to be the flavor of the system, how the IEC allocates seats. On the background, just to take you back to where this all started, with the Constitutional Court in 2020 making a ruling that independent candidates were going to be a feature in the national and provincial elections for the first time. And there was a lot that happened thereafter, including the Parliament being given time to then align the legislation to be in sync with what the Constitutional Court had ruled in terms of elections. What was important and what is still important for us to indicate that it's not the IEC law, it's the country's law, and it had to go to Parliament for the Parliament to align it with the Constitutional Court. There were a lot of delays in terms of that, and we made our view very clear in every platform that we found ourselves what impacts the delays in the finalization of legislation was going to have in the planning for elections. We eventually had the Electoral Amendment Act enacted in June 2023, which then said we can begin in earnest as the institution to plan for elections. Now, what were the new features in these elections? There are features that had to do with the system itself, the contestants, the voters, as well as the ballot paper, which I'm sure I'm talking to the converted here, but it's a good place to start. In terms of the participants, the contestants, for the first time, we were going to see the participation of independents. And other than the Electoral Amendment Act itself, we also had to align our own Electoral Act and our own regulations as an institution to make room for the participation of independents in these elections. And then in terms of voters, I think the biggest change, although it didn't happen now, it happened in 2021, but I don't think everyone noticed at the time because we implemented it now in 2024. The Section 24A provision, which is the provision in the Act that allows somebody to vote outside of their registration VD, to vote pretty much anywhere. That section was amended in 2021 to put limitations into the provision. The limitation was that for you to just show up anywhere and show proof that you are registered and be allowed to vote, you needed to notify the commission first. And that was the first time that was done in the national and provincial elections, that you couldn't just show up anywhere and claim that because you are registered, you would want to vote. So that was a major change in terms of national and provincial elections. The other change was voters that were already registered on the overseas segment of the voters roll. In the past, you needed to notify the commission through lodging an application that you would like to vote in one of our missions abroad. With these elections, if you were already on the overseas segment of the voters roll, you didn't need to notify us because we already have that voters roll in existence, except if you have changed countries or except if you were going overseas on a temporal basis, then you needed to inform us so that we put you on the segment of whichever mission that you're going to be close to. Voters who had missed an opportunity to register overseas, because we had a registration weekend in all our foreign missions abroad as well. If you have missed that opportunity, the timetable creates a second opportunity for you to notify the commission by a date that was specified on the election timetable that you would like to be included, and all those people were included. In terms of the ballot papers, the 3 ballots, the popular 3 ballots, we had to introduce, the Act introduced a 3rd ballot with a sole purpose of accommodating independence in our elections. You will recall that before now, we only had 2 ballot papers for national and provincial elections, and all of them only had political parties. So there was a need to review the legislation to make room for the participation of independents. And also because at a national level, it was a 2-tier government. There was a tier that was only contested by political parties, where you use the compensatory ballot, which only had political parties in it, but you also had the regional ballot, which was new in the environment, which accommodated both political parties and regions, because there was a realization that it would be unfair to expect that independents will contest along the same basis as political parties for all 400 seats. So room for independence was created in the regional ballot, where they were contesting with political parties, but there was still room for independents to participate in a provincial level. But we still had 1 ballot at a provincial level, which catered for both, because there's a single tier government at a provincial level. Unlike at a national, where it's a 2-tier that recognizes regional representation of contestants in the National Assembly. So between the seats at national level, we've got 200 that are contested by parties only, which is a compensatory one, but on the regional one, that's where the room was created for independence, because it was acknowledged that independence come from provinces. So they could contest the regional ballot, which is why we then had the 3rd ballot. I thought I'll touch briefly on measures that the Commission put in place to make sure that we have a free, transparent, and fair election in the country. And these are the things that we don't always talk about in the public domain, but these are the things that we discuss in detail with the contestants. And some of them, would want the public to believe that these things are not in place when they actually are. First of all is the party registration process. The framework for registering political parties in this country, which also is the function of the Commission, is that before we can register any political party, there is a public process where that political party has got to issue a public notice if they are registering at a national level, if they are registering at a provincial level, only using the provincial media, where they have to publicize their name, their logos, all their identifiers as a party, to give space for whoever may want to object to the name, the logo of the party, and the party colors, and the party also have to refer the public to their constitution so that the public can have an opportunity to scrutinize their constitution as a party to see that it doesn't contradict any provision of the country's constitution. So that process runs for a period of time before, as a commission, we can even look at their constitution. There is room for political parties or any other person to object to the party identifiers if they think they have a potential of confusing voters. So that's a process that we will run together with the political parties. Secondly, we have party liaison committees, which are the structures that exist even outside of elections. We already have 2 political party meetings in this province after elections, where we discuss all sorts of things, whether we are delimiting voting district boundaries, whether we are identifying voting stations, whether we are recruiting staff before we can confirm people that are going to preside in voting stations, the presiding officers and their deputies. We give their names to political parties, and for the first time independents. They keep that list for 14 days and they scrutinize it. If there is any person on that list that they believe has a potential of, in terms of the public, has a potential of discrediting the Electoral Commission in any way, we are able to replace that person. And that's the process that we do with political parties 6 months before the election date, so that we give them an opportunity to satisfy themselves that the people that will be working, especially the presiding officers and their deputies, will stand the test of time, both in terms of communities and in terms of them as contestants, in terms of the acceptability of those people. Results capturing. We capture results at the voting station as the commission in duplicate, and we leave a copy on the window or the door of the voting station, and we take another copy for capturing in our offices. And while we are doing that, we want to enable anyone who would have voted in that voting station, and political parties and voters, to have a copy of the results slip, so that when we post our results, all that you will need to do is to just verify that what you see on our website is exactly what came from the voting station. So party agents are present at the voting station, but at our results capturing sites, we also have the party liaison committee members, which is made up of all the contestants in that election. We also have training program that we run with contestants. We run that with political parties, but if they are independent, we run that. If the independent has got an election task team that he's working with, we run that as well. We take them through the entire framework. Those that would have joined us after we had the limited voting stations, voting districts and identified voting stations, we take them through that entire process, just for them to have an understanding of what had happened before they came to the fold. We make available the voters' roll to all contesting parties and independents at no cost. There is a framework to lodge objections at any stage of the election process, from the registration of voters. If somebody wants to object to a person appearing on the assignment of the voters' roll, there is an opportunity to object during candidate nomination processes. If there is a candidate that we believe does not meet the requirement of participating in these elections, there is an opportunity to do that. During the voting itself, during the counting, and even after counting, after we've issued the results, there is an opportunity in our framework for people to lodge objections and submit evidence if they believe that there is something untoward that happened at any stage in the election process. So, the results development system, this is a very critical one. Before our results system is locked and ready for use on election day, all contestants at a national level, if there is a party that is contesting in case that only and not contesting at a national, an opportunity is created for them as well to send their IT bills to our national office and sit down with our ICT infrastructure department and be taken through the development of the results system itself, so that they are comfortable there of how it is constructed and how it's going to work on the day, so that no one come up with stories that they are probably algorithms that we build into our system that minus is from this one and gives to this one in the back end. This is something that political parties do, and we have experience as the commission where you have political parties that bring IT specialists from overseas to do that for them if they believe they do not have the capacity to do that in the country as a party. We allow that for them to understand the back-end construction and working of our results system before it is certified for use on election day. Ballot paper development, we also do not go to print until political parties have looked at the ballot papers and understood the security features that are built into the ballot paper that makes it impossible for anyone to duplicate our ballot paper, even if you had an opportunity of seeing what it looks like, because of the security features that are built in, which you cannot see with the naked eye. You are not able to duplicate our ballot papers. Party agents and observers, as I've indicated, are present at the various stages, from this administration of special votes 2 days before elections, the election day itself, and during the results collation process. The third bullet under party agents as observers, I think, is an important one. We provide codes to all contestants, meaning political parties and independents, as well as all the media houses that are accredited to have a presence in our results operation centers. We give them an access to our results system. What that means is that they see the results at the same time as us in our system. They have a code to access our results system so that as and when the result is finalized for any voting station, it then comes through to our system. They see it at the same time as we see it as well, because the results are captured in different capturing sites in the 44 municipalities in the province, and that applies nationally as well. So as soon as the result has been captured and has been audited, because we've got independent firms of auditors that are awarded the contracts to audit our results. Once a result has been audited, it then becomes available in our system. So political parties and the media were seeing those results at the same time as us, as and when they get finalized in the various municipalities. So we saw them at the same time as them, which basically meant that if they had party agents at voting stations, they are able to immediately verify that the results that is captured on our website is the same results that came from the voting station. If there is any change, there will be two results slips that are scanned in the system, one reflecting the original one, and the second one reflecting if there was any tallying errors in the results slip. And we scan both into our system so that if you go to our website and our system, you are able to see both the original one and the second one whenever corrections were made. I think the important thing as well is that the commission decisions are appealable. You can appeal the decisions of the commission with the electoral court, and the electoral court operates at the level of the high court. So beyond the electoral court is the constitutional court, which is something that we have seen playing out since the elections, where people lodge objections. If not happy with the decision of the electoral court, they appeal those with the constitutional court. That same applies with us as well. If we are not happy with the decision of the electoral court, because the electoral court is not our court, it's an independent court. And if we are not happy as the electoral commission, we also can appeal the decision of the electoral court, like you've seen us doing since the elections. So far, we've had 17 matters before the court. The final one only finalized yesterday. But out of the 17, one is still pending. Out of the 17, so far, it's 16-0 in our favor. Appreciation of the scope of the elections in the KZN province. We account for 20% of the voters in the country as KZN. The same applies with voting stations. We account for 21% of voting stations in the country, similar to the Eastern Cape. Together, we are responsible for 42% of voting stations in the country. In terms of the voting station infrastructure, which is quite important in terms of our operation, we have 4,848 voting stations that are permanent when we use a solid structure like this one. The rest of the voting stations, 117, are temporal, where we use tents because there is no solid facility that we can use in that community. So instead of voters traveling to the next available station, we bring a station to them through a tent. And then we have mobile stations in the province, and then we are sitting at 9 at the moment, where we do not have a facility. We merely go in for 2 hours and administer voters who are found in a particular, it's mostly game reserves, where we have people that live and work in game reserves. Usually they are not more than 200. We will go and administer those voters for 2 hours, and then we go back and run the permanent voting station for that voting districts. We also had 35 correctional facilities in this province where we needed to go and administer voting on the morning of election day as well. This is the kind of infrastructure we went into elections with. I must indicate that this is a huge improvement in the province. We started in 3-digit figures in all these facilities, but this is how we looked going into elections. We were only left with 323 voting stations that didn't have electricity, where we had to improvise with the assistance of municipalities and ESCOM. Electoral staff, we also accounted for 22% of the staff that worked in these elections as KZN due to the high number of voting districts that we have and basically the size of our province. Contestants and ballot papers. We had the first line, which is great, is the number of people that applied to contest these elections. The second line, which is black, is the number that was disqualified, and the red number is the final figures that we went with into these elections in terms of people that contested the national ballots, the regional ballots, this is the KZN regional ballots, and then the provincial ballots, where we ended up with 33 contestants in the ballots, including one independent. Candidates, this is the total number of candidates that contested elections in the province. We had 609 candidates in the regional ballots and 1,044 candidates that came through the list of political parties. The 1,044 delegates, by the way, were contesting the 80 seats that we have in our provincial legislature. The table below is simply a breakdown by gender. Being me, I had to do that. And to just show the gender breakdown of candidates in these elections, which is the opposite of what the voters roll look like. In terms of the voters roll, we have 54% females, but in terms of candidates, we had 40% females on the regional ballots and 43% females on the provincial ballots, in terms of the list that were submitted by political parties. Ballot papers, I thought it's important that I share as well, that in terms of the number of ballot papers that we printed far more than the number of people that we had on our voters roll. Our voters roll had 5.7 people, 5.7 million, but we printed 5.9 ballot papers for each ballot type because we had 3 different ballots in these elections. What pumps up the figures is that if you've got 90 people registered in any voting station, we just round that off to the nearest 100, and we print 100. That takes care of any cancelled ballots where somebody makes a mistake at a voting station and then asks to issue a second ballot. We make room for that, but we plan as if we're going to have 100% turnout, and we know we never have that in elections. And then also we needed to take care of Section 24A cases that would have been approved to vote outside of their voting districts to make sure that we don't run out of ballots because of people that are not registered there but have been approved to vote there. We also, in terms of distribution, we distribute 100%. We don't keep any ballot papers behind. We'll rather have a surplus than run short of ballot papers. And then lastly, which was the innovation since 2021, is the ballot paper tracking tool, where at every stage of the delivery of the ballot papers from the printers, they scan and issue them out. We scan and receive them in the provincial warehouse. We scan them out when they go to municipalities. They scan the same barcode to receive those ballots, and then they issue those ballots to voting stations. And when the presiding officer receives those, they also scan them, which makes it possible for us to track every ballot paper book that moves around. As long as it has been scanned at the point of issuing or at the point of receipt, we are able to pick up how many ballot papers have been issued to each voting station. Prison and special votes and Section 24A, this is basically figures demonstrating the planned versus the actual in terms of the special votes that were approved in the province. The actual column indicates the actual number of special votes that were administered in the province, and that makes 65% of all approved special votes. These are the people who voted on the Monday and the Tuesday before elections, either at voting stations or they were visited at home for whatever reason. We could not visit everyone that had applied for a visitation because we wasted a lot of time visiting addresses of people, and when we arrive at their homes, people are not home. Or we arrive at their home and they tell us, no, I didn't apply for a special vote. I want to experience elections at a voting station, which confirms that political parties abuse this provision, because all you needed to have is an ID number of a person to apply for them to be visited for whatever reason. mostly reasons of infirmity. But this provision was highly abused to an extent that people that were seriously deserving of this provision, we couldn't get to them because we couldn't risk our staff working in the dark on those 2 days, visiting people's homes. Section 24A, we had 82,000 approved in KZN, and we had 56% of the people turning up and then voting outside of their voting districts. We probably will talk later about the issues encountered with Section 24A. As I move towards closing, I thought it's important that we also list the various entities that we work with in elections. All these institutions that I've projected play a role or the other in elections, whether it's around the securing of elections, whether it's around the election logistics, whether it's around the provision of infrastructure that we needed in voting stations, but they all have a role to play in elections. There's always an issue around the involvement of state entities in elections. I can assure you now that if we didn't do that, we wouldn't be able to deliver an election. And our constitution is crafted to also make provision for collaboration among state entities to make sure that each plays a role in preparing for the elections, from the provision of intelligence around issues of security in the province, which then informs the deployment strategy for the SAPS. All those arms have got to work together in synchrony for us to be able to deliver a safe and decent elections in our province. These are some of the structures that we have to set up long before elections to deliver elections. We've got the Provincial Election Steering Committee, which involves us, the State Security Agency, COPTAM, and the Office of the Premier, where we mainly look at any issues that may impact the elections negatively in the province and make sure that the various government departments do what they need to do, whether it's the SAPS, whether it's disaster management at COPTA, whether it's the schools infrastructure in education. All those entities have to work together. So the coordination of the work that is done by government to support to provide the infrastructure that we need for election is coordinated through COPTA, which is the lead department in government. And that's where we channel all our infrastructural needs. As a province, the voting station infrastructure task team is self-explanatory. The Provincial Joint Operations Committee, which is a permanent structure that brings together all state entities in the province, and we look at who is doing what at what time, so that we know that staffs have got sufficient capacity to take care of all the various activities and events that take place in the province. And elections was one of those, but we're not the only ones. There were a lot of other competing activities at the time. For example, the KZN tourism in Indaba, which was also happening. The reason we all have to come together as state entities is to make sure that staffs have got sufficient capacity to take care of all of us. If not, they then request from other provinces or they bring the SAMDF on board. The National Priority Committee, the provincial joins becomes the National Priority Committee 3 months before elections, which then focuses strictly on elections. And we also have the legislature through the Office of the Speaker, where we roll out our voter education programs in collaboration with all other entities. But in terms of the provincial government, the Office of the Speaker is responsible in the legislature, working together with GCIS and the communication wings of all the government departments. This applies to districts and local municipalities as well, where we work with the communication officers in districts and local municipalities. And we are stuck. Collaborations with civil society entities, this is the list of all entities that we work with. It's not exhaustive. For example, I haven't included the media, both community media and the mainstream media. These are all the entities that we had to have specific sector engagements with to make sure that they understand the election framework and assist us in our communication campaign. it jumped. Yes. This is the final slides to just indicate to you what the results in KZN look like eventually. I will make this available, but it's also available on our website. Those are the results, and those are the parties on top is arranged in descending order. So it starts with the party that got most votes on the national ballot. This is the national ballot for KZN, not the national. This is the result of the KZN national ballot, and this is what the results look like. This the second page. You can visit our website and see the details. This is the results on the KZN regional ballot, which is also available on our website. What we did for you is that we arranged this in descending order, so that you can see the top 10 parties that got the highest number of votes in our province. And then the last one is the provincial ballot, KZN ballot. And this is how it looked like. I think for me, the most interesting is the independent candidate, who was number 2467. This is the only independent that contested in KwaZulu-Natal and managed to get 12,000 votes. And if you look at that in comparison with all the other parties that have been in the field for quite some time, if there was a seat available for number 7, in terms of the percentage voter support, the independent would have gotten that seat. So he actually did very well. This was totally unexpected. That's why we said that we arrange it in descending order so that you get a clue of how well our independent did in this province. And then this is the last 2 slides. I thought it's important that I share with you the quota, how we work out the quota that is then used to allocate seats. We have to consider all the valid votes that were cast in the province for each ballot, but this is for the provincial ballot. For the provincial ballot, we had to look at A, represent the total number of valid votes, or B, represent the number of seats in our legislature. The X then requires us to add the +1 when we work a quota so that we kill fractions on the quota for ease of application. So this is in the law, by the way. It's not IEC creation, it's in the law. This is how it looked like when we were working it out. If you look at it, that's the total number of people that voted in the provincial ballot in the province, 3.5 million. We then divided that by the 86 that we have in our provincial legislature. Then we add the +1 as dictated by the Act, and the quota then became 43,000. This is what it took to get a seat in our provincial legislature. You needed to get at least 43,000 votes for a seat. That's totally different to national, because national have got a far higher quota, because this is linked to the number of people that voted, not people on the voters roll. It's people that would have voted divided by the number of seats in the legislature that gave us 43,000. Now, I thought this was the most important slide, which shows you how we then apply the quota to assign seats per party. And we have the first column, the party name, second one, abbreviations, third one is the votes that each party got, and the next column is the 43,000, which is a quota. We then divide the number of votes received by each party by the quota. The column on results, it then tells us the outcome of that calculation. I'll make an example with the MK, which is at the top because they got the highest number of votes in the province. We applied the quota to their votes received, and they got 36,780, blah, 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 blah. What it means is that when we then allocate seats, once we've applied that quota to the result of each party, we then have to allocate seats. If you look at the MK that got 36.73 after we applied the quota to their results, it means in the first round of seat allocation, we first allocate the whole numbers. So they got their 36, IFP got their 14, ANC they are 13, EDA they are 10, and Economic Freedom Fighters they are 1. Those are the only 4 parties that qualified to get a seat based on the quota, which is 43,000. But because if you look at the bottom, that would have meant we allocated 74 of the 80 seats that are available. What does the law say? The law says that you now need to look at the fractions and start ranking those fractions. The column that says rank fractions, it just tells you how we then ranked all those fractions in terms of the highest. And you could see that the highest, number 1 was the EFF, because their fraction was 8, is 1.8. Number is 1.82. The next fraction is, what is this party? Democratic Alliance. Their fraction is 0.81. The EFF was 82, DA 81, and then you had the ANC, theirs was 0.7, the IFP, theirs was 0.6, and then Mkoto Westis was 0.7. So we then have to look at, we've allocated 74 seats, we're left with 6. We now go to the fractions. The highest fraction gets, the next highest gets, until we run out of seats. So this is how we do seat allocation, and this is how we ended up with, okay, there's the colors that are not showing, I don't know why.
Maximum available.
In terms of seat allocation. Let's try. I think it takes long to load because of the colors. But basically, that's how we calculate, we work out seat allocation. And the final seat allocation for the province is available. I'm sure that's one of the issues that have been in the media for quite some time. What I wanted to just take you through is how we actually do seat allocation. So if somebody says they were robbed in terms of seats, you can actually work it out yourself. The calculations that I did are the calculations. I don't actually see it with a calculator. The formula is built into our result system. As and when the results come in, it automatically calculates seats allocation until we've received the last result. So it's a continuous process, and political parties have access to that system. So they could see seat allocation changes as and when they happen, because as and when results were coming in, it was calculated. So what happened is that there are representatives of political parties that took a snapshot of seat allocation at a particular point in time. And then they ran that against the final seat allocation. And the narrative was see how they cook the results. But this is basically how the seat allocation looked in KZN. And that's where I wanted to end this presentation. Unfortunately, it doesn't like this.
Animations.
And that program director was going to be the end of my presentation. It is available if anyone is interested. I can share this presentation. I also did seat allocation for the national as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So if you could take a seat there, Mark, and then we'll go into our question and answers. We'll take 3 questions for now. Mrs. Masinga is going to be available for the next panel discussion in collaboration with our other colleagues for further questions. But I think, Star, if we go back to our presentation, please, there's this one slide, the slide about the seat allocations that I want to be able to reference. And based off of this process of seat allocation, it's not purely a percentage discussion, if you're looking specifically also at the idea of voter turnout. And so some of the ways in which we need to realign our thinking and realign the ways in which we perceive or think about seat allocation at provincial legislatures and as well as parliament is not just purely a reflection of 45% versus 2%, etc., because that's not how the formula is. The nature of the formula doesn't look at percentages at all. But ultimately, I wanted to make the joke that Tina, I mean, the pure maths have a better understanding of this formula. Our colleagues are maths No, thank you very much. 3 questions, please. Direct, concise, to the point. That might be directed to Mr. That time. You know, Hope Alive is here, Inland FM is here. They're interviewing me now as a DJ. How are they going to allow that time on air?
Good morning, everyone. My question to the speaker is, you spoke about the framework for lodging or objections to the perceived irregularities that are allowed. So I think for me this information is new, and I'm part of the team that currently works with DDP to go into the communities and offer civic education assistance. And I think if this information mostly is regularly shared with a lot of NGOs that are trying their best to actually bridge the gap between the IEC, the information, and I think when you spoke about the voter turnout, that's another issue, because now when you are working in the community and you are trying to actually explain the situation, because now everybody believes that the system was rigged, but we know from the first time since we were there that people did not go to vote. For example, in my ward, I think we had like 11,000 people who were registered to vote, but I think the MK won with 1,500, which means showed less than 4,000 people went to vote, and people are complaining. So for me, I think it would be, can you guys as IEC please try your best to assist organizations like DDP, because with the work of civic education, to be realistic, it's very huge, and I see that the IEC cannot reach almost each and every citizen in South Africa.
Thank you very much. So, you know, this election was very interesting for me as someone who works in the space, who thought also NAMI, because of the work that we do with the IEC, that I would be as knowledgeable on. But the wave of disinformation and malinformation was so significant that it felt overwhelming, NAMI. Well, I was like, hey, you can't in a way that doesn't seem or appear demeaning to their intellectual ability to analyze things from their side as well. Because this is also not just, it's not just an information thing, but it becomes quite emotional as well when we are in the space of trying to engage about the lived experiences of people. Last week, Otobani was like, and this video is this, how do I disprove the things that I'm seeing with my eyes type of thing. So it becomes quite interesting to try and work with that. Because that's all. But of course, we'll get the next question.
ngisuke senwa-account nale ezingeni eliphezulu seninikezwe iy'mali ama-voting stations. Mhlambe nikwenza kanjani ukuthi nikuvimbele, ngoba ngicabanga ukuthi ubukhwabane la kusebenza khona kakhulu ingalesi sivota noma sekubala kanjani na? Mhlambe imiphumela engakuthiwa ingakafiki kunina, kodwa bayakwazi ukuthola ukuthi omunye ngalesi sikhathi kuvota la bamnikeze extra kulamaphepha lawa. Even kuthiwa iphutha akalenjalo. Okwesibili, noma sekubala kuba khona ama-party agents lapha, uthola ukuthi awafundisekile ukwazi ukukhuluma ukuthi no asiboni kahle lapha. Babuye barojwe nje phambi kwabo kanje ukuthi ngalesi sikhathi kubalwa bebhekile, yabo. Bese futhi bengenzile ukuthi bese kuthina sama-observers ngoba phela ukhuluma usukubuka nje ukuthi bayaqina. Bese uyasho ukubhala phansi. Bese kuthi emva kwenyanga njengamanje sizosho kuwena ukuthi lapha kwakunenkinga. Nina nihlehla kanjani ukubheka ukuthi mhlambe ngokubala iy'namba zakho ngeke udinge ukuthi ngenze ibani pure maths ingangisebenzela iphuzu lami lila ekutheni nibamba kanjani ukurobheka lokhu kwenzeka lapha ama-voting stations, ngoba nina nisuke seninikezwe iy'namba laphaya, nisuke senibala iy'namba kodwa ukwabantu kuba la ngicabanga ukuthi mhlambe umbuzo wakho kanjani.
Well, thank you very much, Regizenzo. Perhaps a final one is on the subject of uniformity of filling in the results. There was a sense that some presiding officers weren't doing that in a way that was consistent. In some instances, they were filling in the first part, the first 4 blocks of the ballot paper, for instance, and then there was an opportunity potentially to do something dubious with the other parts of so the reconciliation of the process of when it's not consistent overall. We'll give you an opportunity to respond, and then Tabi will then introduce our next set of speakers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I acknowledge the comment from the first speaker around the education campaign. We did everything we could do. We were in all social media platforms. We called sessions with the community media, the commercial media, the parts of all the media houses that we work with, particularly the public broadcaster. We collaborated with a whole lot of entities and our expansion staff 8 months before the elections, and all they did was civic education and educating particularly on the changes on the legal framework. And we use radio and TV a lot. But you can never say you've done enough in educating. And we make sure that we make information available to institutions like the DDP and other civil society entities to further disseminate that information through whatever channels that they have. But every opportunity for us is an opportunity to educate. Today was meant to only talk about how the elections went, but I still use that opportunity to educate because I know there's then one person who may be interacting with the commission for the first time. So whatever platform we find ourselves, we do. But we rely a lot. I mean, these expansion staff that I'm talking about that came in to focus primarily on educating on the election framework, they are now gone. They are not in the environment anymore. When you talk about the IEC, you're talking about 2 people per municipality average who have to deliver all the by-elections that we have, who have to start working with the MDB in terms of the redemarcation of ward boundaries, because as soon as the MDB finalizes a ward, they pass it on to us and we have to redraw our voting district boundaries. So we simply are not enough as the commission, because at any given time, the operation takes precedence of our education programs. And when we have 2 people and you have to deliver a by-election, the focus is delivering a by-election. And KZN unfortunately has a by-election every month in different parts of the province. So we rely on civil society entities that assist us. We make this information available electronically to any entity to enable them to further disseminate it on our behalf as the Electoral Commission. What I'm happy about is the transparency that exists in our environment makes it almost impossible to interfere with the results of an election. Before we arrive at the results collation process at the end of the day, there's a reconciliation that happens daily that starts on the Monday before elections, because we start issuing election material and ballot papers on Monday. When people go out, we know sitting where we are sitting how many ballot books they are using. When they come back, they have to do a reconciliation with political parties. There's a team that goes out to do home visits, but there's a team that stays at a voting station to receive people that would have applied for a special vote but at the voting station. Once the home visits team is done, they have to come back to the voting station and they have to do a reconciliation in the presence of party agents of the number of ballot papers that were issued in the morning, the number of ballot papers that were used, and the number of people that were administered via special votes. And that reconciliation continues on Tuesday. They don't get a new set of ballot papers on Tuesday. They don't get a new set of ballot papers on election. They keep reconciling every day based on the original number of ballot papers that were issued. Now, on the commission side, the people who work for the commission are ordinary people like you and me. They just go to the website of the IEC and apply to work on election day. So when they arrive at the voting station, they don't know each other because they don't know who has been employed. All of them apply online because it's 3 elections in a row now where we've opened the recruitment process up so that we had a bigger pool of people that we recruit from. So it's an open public process where everyone can apply. And once we've recruited those people, as the Electoral Commission have indicated that they get vetted by political parties themselves. What I didn't mention is that they get vetted by the SSA as well for records of serious offences. When we employ those people and put them in voting station, it doesn't change the fact that they are still human beings like me and you. And what has the IEC done? We have made provision to have party agents in all voting stations for every political party or independent that is contesting an election. Once the voting is complete, I was worried that my phone is here. Once we have put people at voting stations, our check and balance is the party agents, where every political party is entitled to put a party agent, not 1, 2, in every voting station throughout the country. And those party agents have got to be part of the reconciliation processes from the time we start in the morning until we finish. They also have to sign off the results slip. We don't just complete a results slip, we start with completing a voting station diary, and then we capture the results on the results worksheet, which is an A3 size, which is big enough for everyone to see what is being captured. And then we transfer those results into the results slip. So the results slip is the 3rd layer of results capturing. Now, over and above us, allowing party agents at every step of the process. We are short of putting cameras in voting stations, which we cannot afford, because those voting stations are not ours. If we could put CCTV cameras in those voting stations, we would. But over and above the presence of party agents, there is actually nothing else that we can do on our side to make sure that everything happens correctly. I'll just quote 2 examples before I move from the platform. We had a presiding officer that was arrested in Ulundi, and another one that was arrested in Umbubulu in the 2021 local government elections. What did they do? In the morning when we start the process, our ballot boxes come flat. We actually construct it in front of the party agents, which is why party agents have got to arrive at least 30 minutes before we open voting stations. We build that ballot box in front of party agents so that they know there is nothing stuffed inside that ballot box. What did these presiding officers do? Both of them in different parts of the province. They decided to arrive very early at the voting stations because they know party agents arrive late. They arrive very early. They construct a ballot box because our instruction to them is that if party agents are not there at 10 to 7, build that ballot box because at 7 you have to open a voting station. With or without party agents, the process has to start on time. So they arrive very early, they build a ballot box. I'll use the latest example, Yasembumu. This presiding officer built a ballot box and then started voting before everyone arrived. Voted on 24 ballot papers and stuffed them inside. Party agents arrived, late of course, and the party agents say, but you're supposed to construct this one in front of us, and the presiding officer said, but you were late. The instruction is that if you are not here, I start. So this party agent said, listen, because there is no one in the queue, there is no one waiting to vote, we are not delaying any voter. Those are trained party agents. Put that ballot box aside, let's construct another one. Now that we are here, because we're not delaying any voter. And the presiding officer had no option but to construct a new one. And later on, they don't say anything about the one that the presiding officer constructed before they arrived. The presiding officer starts panicking and phones the area manager. Area manager is a person responsible for a cluster of voting stations. He phones the area manager and confesses. She says, listen, I did this. These people are not asking me anything. They've asked me to put this ballot box aside. I don't know what their plan is. The area manager says, you know what you've done to me, do it to them as well, because we don't want them finding out in other means. Confess and then get yourself to a police station. Now. There's a party agent that is trained. The same thing happened in Ulundi as well. And those people were both fined 5 years. The Ulundi one, unfortunately, magistrates use these sentences in a different way. The Ulundi one served the sentence in prison. The other one got a suspended sentence because of the mitigating circumstances around who they are and what they do and blah, blah, blah. But I'm saying that without the party agents, there is no way of me or anyone else knowing that something went wrong at a voting station. And if parties do not utilize this provision of party agents properly, I'm telling you, people who work in voting stations can do things because people can be bribed to do things. You can never stop that. Sitting in the provincial office, there is no way of knowing what the presiding officer in Umlazi is doing. What we did as well, the reason we went online in terms of applications is because we were getting feedback that people who work in voting stations are people who know each other. And we said, okay, everybody apply online. So the presiding officer meets the people that they work with for the first time on the voting station. And for us, there's another buffer to make sure that we don't have friends or family members or people from the same political party working together. But on the objections that we receive after elections, you will not understand the extent of the objections that we deal with after elections. When mistakes are picked up in the results slip, a party will say, I got 10 on the regional ballot, I got 9 on the provincial ballots, and then I got 0 on the national ballot. Then they lodge an objection and we go back and when we investigate, we look at the results worksheet, we look at the results diary, which are the first 2 places that results get captured before we capture on the results slip. We do pick up errors. That's the results that were supposed to be given to the DA were given to the party below. And you'll find that sometimes it's just an honest error because it's a party that even doesn't have a presence in KZN, so you can't say this person was doing a favor for this party. They don't even know this party. It's a capturing error, but we are able to pick it up because political parties do have access to our results. These objections come through long before we issue results because political parties have access to the live feed of results as they come in. And as they pick up those errors, they bring them to our attention, we investigate and we correct. So those things happen. Some are innocent mistakes, some are people with ulterior motives. But party agents are our saving grace. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So,
Please, the camera one. So for our next 2026 and 2029 observation, we're going to try and work with you to put cameras, CCTVs. We're going to monitor the monitors. Our own observers will see if you're there as well. No, but generally, we did get an offer from a security company who have worked with you in the past to think about how we put cameras in every voting station. At the time that they asked us this, we didn't have the money, but also just it was a poor timing. It was quite late in the process. So I think that could be an interesting development going forward. Election integrity continues to be an important facet, especially just in making people feel comfortable and at ease about where the state of our democracy is. Otherwise, we are all anxious and live in anxious times. I'd like to welcome now Sebonga Khulu. A round of applause for Mrs. Masinga once more. I'm going to now introduce and hand over to my colleague Utabile Mdluli. Utabile Mdluli is the founder and director of Uhange, a social enterprise that looks at developing civic education, particularly around voter education. She is an associate facilitator at the Democracy Government Program. She's an award-winning social entrepreneur, having won, I think it was an ABSA competition last year. But it's fine. So she'll be chairing the next session, and we welcome her and to introduce the next speakers. A round of applause for her.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. How are we today? We're good.
All right, so my job is quite simple today. It's to chair our next session with our panelists. But before we begin and get straight to it, I want to get from the room, how are we feeling, before and after the elections? So how are you feeling before the elections, and how are you feeling after the elections? Was my question clear? So how are we feeling before the elections, and how are we feeling now? And if you can, tell me the reasons for that as well. Can I have 2 hands? 2 hands. I ask nicely.
There's one.
I smile. Okay, so we have 1 hand over here, and there's another one at the back with Umanzuza. Yes, Budi, please state your name.
I think the feeling I found
Okay.
before election, some of the cities in the election I found in 1994.
Okay.
So my election very simple many sazi ukuthi kuzoba but lesikazi ukuthi i-discussion to ukuthi wonke lamaqembu asebenzisana i-vision ethini, because if we are election we believe ukuthi i-vision ukuthi kusizwe abantu South Africa, not ukuthi abantu bayibekele bona izikhundla, but njengamanje wenza umzekelo eGauteng. So we see ukuthi eGauteng the majority party iluzile, sesiyasho majority because it's a leader base, but iluzile, but ngendlela i-discussion you see ukuthi labantu basafuna bona ukuba besemandleni, not to include amanye ama-political party. Forget about i-DA, amanye ama-political party akhona. You will see now even nangendlela abayibhekele ngayo i-ANC kufanele ukuthi ayiluzanga.
Okay, let's park it there. Let's park it there, because we still have our panelists and we're still going to have an opportunity to dive in further into that. Thank you so much, Budi. Matsu's at the back.
Thank you so much, program facilitator. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm looking towards 2024. I was very excited. Because of this hype, because it's our new 1994 sort of election that we're looking forward to. But looking at all facets, from a democracy point of perspective, where are we now? I'm not sure if I'm excited or not, but I just reserve my comments. However, my only concern maybe is a little bit of on IEC. With the new innovations they put in place, type of VMDs, wow, we're looking excited to that. We can actually tally our information, but the system was crumbling. It was supposed to work offline. It was supposed to assist us when we issue Section 24A balloting. Because when we qualify for 1, we qualify for 3. If the system is not working at the station, who to give how many. So those loopholes cause a sense of discomfort. We're seeing also equality of ballot box. Corner times now figure ukuthi sebeyowabeka ngosiyambengenzi fraud aphahlala ama-ballot box. Why are we not investing in equality? Ukuthi are we not doing enough measures to ensure integrity yethu ukuthi ingacompromiseki? Corner, that's a security material. You need to ensure that it's good quality, it can carry the weight. But money can be better.
I hear you. I hear you. Let's park it there. It's a good thing that we have Mrs. Masinga here who will also be joining the later part of our panel discussion, and we can raise even more of those issues. So we had a sense of, we were excited before, but even after now we have voted, the developments are here, it seems as if we're not feeling it. Those are the sentiments that I'm feeling here. And you even mentioned that 2024 is going to be our 1994. And the question that when hearing all of that is, what is the change that we were actually hoping to see? When we're saying that this is not what we expected, my main question is, what is the change that we as citizens were actually hoping to see? But let's see if maybe our panelists can assist us in that direction. So I have three panelists, three very esteemed panelists who are going to be expressing their unique views on, the 2024 elections, the outcomes, and where we see ourselves going forward. First, I have Prof. Ntsikelelo Benjamin Breakfast. Is currently working for the Nelson Mandela University. He has experience in curriculum design and development, teaching, community engagement, and management as an academic. He is the former head of School for Security and Africa Studies at Stellenbosch University. Over and above that, he has held the position of chair of the Department of Political Science in the Faculty of Military Science at Stellenbosch University. Furthermore, at the moment, he is the head of the Department of History and Political Science. No, we need to work even more. Hey, I can't even with his bio. Yeah, so he is the head of Department of History and Political Studies and Associate Professor at Nelson Mandela University. Prof. Breakfast has published locally and internationally in accredited journals. He is also the Acting Director of Center for Security, Peace and Conflict Resolution at Nelson Mandela University. He has done some work for local and national media houses as a political analyst. He's a regular guest on Umhlobo Wenene, SABC radio station, every Monday morning at 5:55 a.m. to 6:30 a.m. and does political analysis for Power FM, Cape Talk, just to name a few. Prof. Breakfast, please join us. Assume Pete. So much. You can take a seat. All right, and then I have Mbali Ntuli, our second panelist. She's a community activist and former member of KZN Provincial Legislature and eThekwini Councillor. Mbali is also a successful entrepreneur with a passion for combating injustice and empowering those oppressed and helpless. Mbali is currently focused on going back into communities and working with community leaders and change makers who are already innovating in these spaces and doing the hard work to uplift communities. Her vision for South Africa is a society that is just and equitable, where people's well-being is at the center of the collective nation agenda. She does this as the Executive Director of Groundwork Collective. Mbali Ntuli, please join us. All right, and then our last panelist is Thobani Zikalala. He is an independent political analyst. Thobani Zikalala. Former classmate. All right, so these are our panelists for today. All right, getting acquainted, I see. A GNU of panelists. Starting to form here. All right, let me stand this side. Okay, so these are panelists that are going to be helping us dive deeper in understanding the outcomes of the 2024 elections, where we see ourselves currently. What does this mean for governance, since we have a coalition government? I mean, some might argue that, in essence, we have been operating in somewhat of a coalition since 2018, with the likes of your Patricia de Lille, forming part of, as ministers in the cabinet. They're going to be helping us understand what does that mean for us and the way forward. I'd like to start off with Prof. Ntsikelelo Breakfast, but before that, I'd really like to give us some just rules of engagement and how we're going to be moving forward. So our panelists here will be given 10 minutes to present on a specific topic. Yes, it's all right. 10 minutes. 10 minutes? 10 minutes to be, no, yeah, I was passionate. So they'll be given 10 minutes to express their unique views on certain topics that we're going to be looking at today. Thereafter, we're going to then have a discussion amongst ourselves in our tables and make reflections on what our panelists have said, and thereafter, we're also going to integrate that as a part of our Q&A. Sound good? Perfect. All right, so I'd like to start off with you, Prof. Ntsikelelo. I would like to know from you the implications implications of those elections on the political and governance trajectory in our country. So we're now under this coalition. What does that mean for us as South Africa? What does the governance look like?
Just to set the scene for the audience, I think one-party dominance is a thing of the past, and the hegemony of the ANC has been dealt with a blow in a big way of late, and that has created a scope for coalition arrangements to rise to prominence. Now, coalition formations at local government level in particular have been unworkable and unstable, largely because, in my opinion, South Africa doesn't have a long-standing history of coalition arrangements. I know that is a very controversial assertion, but I'm going to back it up, because in the early 1900s, we saw, for instance, two coalition arrangements. The first one was in 1924 between the National Party and the Labour Party. The second one, we saw it in 1933 between the South African Party and the National Party. Then after that, the National Party rose to prominence and became very hegemonic in the political landscape. And then the ANC came into power in 1994 with a 62% win, coupled with a turnout of 82%. And then in 1999, the ANC again won the elections with a 66%. We had an upward trajectory of a turnout which stood at 86%. The interesting thing is that in 2004, the ANC won by 70%. And the turnout though went down because it stood at 76. But the electoral downward trajectory of the ANC, it showcased itself for the first time in 2009 when there was that breakaway of COPE. Then the ANC dropped from 70% to 66%. And since then, it has been going down. So from that 66% in 2014, it went down to 62%. And then in 2019, they stood at 52%. I think in 2019, I beg your pardon, I think they got 57 if I'm not mistaken. I think that was the last kick of a dying horse. It should have been a wake-up call. And also at local government level, in the recent elections, they got there 45%. And in those elections, had we had general elections, they would have lost actually. So it was obvious, in my opinion, in the recent elections that they were going to lose. It's not something that took me aback when they got 40% on the dot. Now, the concept of coalition arrangement, there was someone who asked what is the difference between power sharing and government of national unity. At a philosophical level, the concept of coalition arrangement was foregrounded by Arend Limfant of Holland in 1969, referring to the situation in Holland. So coalition arrangements basically are about politics of accommodation. That's why, you know, I don't want to be controversial, but the so-called minority groups, they tend to be very fond of coalition arrangements. In particular in our country, because they've had a national grievance, maybe because of racially inspired policies. And I think they find comfort in this particular arrangement. Because when it comes to decision making, there is no political party that imposes its hegemony on all and sundry. You have to have a buy-in from other, political parties. So that's the beauty of coalition arrangements. The second part of it is that coalition arrangements are able to deepen democracy, because then you must get the participation across the political spectrum. But the worst part of it is that it can hold back service delivery, in particular with regard to the approval of the budget, because the budget is about the mobilization of resources I mean, you can have any model of development, but to make it take off the ground, it has to be aligned to money. And I think the key question, or the big question, is what kind of a budget are we going to have in the upcoming budget speech of the Minister of Finance? Are we going to have an expansionary fiscal policy? Are we going to have fiscal discipline? But in my opinion, by the look of things, if you look at the bloated cabinet that we have, it stands to reason what kind of a fiscal policy we're going to have. It will be an expansionary fiscal policy. And then it begs the question, what about issues of budget deficit? So I think the working class is really going to be dealt with a blow in a big way. Just wait a sec. So the interesting phenomenon in this election, and thank goodness we've got to see from the IEC, has been the decline of participation of young people. My view is that we do have youth political apathy. For instance, according to the stats of the IEC, the participation of young people of late stood at 17%, which is the worst that we've ever had. Right? But my argument is that that phenomenon is not confined to our context. It's a global phenomenon. Because during the Cold War, we had two ideological camps, namely capitalism and socialism. And the situation then was demanding for young people to be involved in politics. That's why we had the 1976 uprising and so on. So young people could gravitate either way, whether to the east or to the west. But in 1989, we saw a shift ideologically, whereby there was market prices, because 99, and it has become worse. But also, I think young people have been dealt with a blow in a big way by the structure of the economy. Because if you look at unemployment, it is sitting at 34%, and it is worse amongst the youth. Now, I would like to propose a model of a coalition arrangement, because we've seen how these negotiations have been deep-rooted or protracted amongst, political parties. Thank goodness I'm speaking to civil society, because there was an omission of civil society, which is not a mere omission. I think it's a significant omission, because these discussions have been taking place amongst the political elite. And it begs the question about issues of public participation of ordinary people. I think we need a model whereby negotiations will take place a bit longer, because my view is that the formulators of the Constitution, they never saw it coming that at some point the ANC will lose power. They would never have had a clause that says that negotiation must only take place in 14 days, right? But now we are in this situation. I mean, if you draw from international best practices, negotiations, they run for 6 months, not 2 weeks. So I think that clause, it needs to be refined. The second thing is that I think when there are, conflict is a natural phenomenon. Where there are human beings, there are problems. So when there are problems, I think there needs to be a platform that is created for those conflicts to be managed, not to be resolved. There's a difference between resolving a conflict and managing a conflict. You cannot resolve conflicts, but you can manage the contradictions. There needs to be that. At the moment, that platform does not exist. Look at what had happened in Gauteng. They've been without a government. Even this one, in my opinion, is fragile. Right? And then the other thing is that I think these negotiations should not be seen as a win-lose situation. They should be seen as a win-win situation, whereby when problems arise, political parties, they hit them hard, but then be soft on each other. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Some great insights there, touching on us maybe looking at our electoral framework after elections, especially now with the fact that we have coalitions, maybe just looking back and rethinking how we do things. Thank you so much. Up next, Bali Dupli. So you're going to be taking us forward now, and we are going to be looking at electoral integrity as the maker for what we would say, in quotation marks, trustworthy electoral outcomes?
Thank you very much. So yes, I've been asked to just give a reflection on civil society's reflections on the credibility of the elections. And I think just before we get into, because I think Uma Masego did it really well to explain how the IEC works and what has actually happened. We must take it right back to how we got to some of the situations that we had in these elections. So people, were discussing the fact that there was a lot of voter miseducation, people didn't understand law section 24A, and all these different things that they think contributed to what was an election that some particular political players were saying was an unfair one, uncredible one. But we have to go back to see how did we get to this situation. And the truth of the matter is that the political parties that are actually in parliaments in the last administrations were the ones who created this urgent need for us to change things, whether it was Section 24A because they were complaining that maybe people can double vote, or whether it was the inclusion of independence and how that would be done. And I think that the IEC throughout the process was very good at saying what they thought would be the difficulties and the ways that these political parties were trying to have these laws passed and were trying to put them in a corner about it. And I think the IEC did a phenomenal job of at least letting the parties know what would be the problems down the line. But quite frankly, by last year, we still had a bill that hadn't been formally signed. We still had all these issues that were up in the air in terms of the Constitutional Court, how we were going to manage these independents on the ballot, what was that going to look like, what was the minimum requirement for signatures, what were going to be all these new rules which we had for the first time in these elections. And I think because we haven't, as South Africans, taken more of a participatory engagement and making sure that political parties are actually doing the work that they're supposed to be doing for us and not trying to gerrymander things so that it's good for them, we also let ourselves down by allowing them to push through things at a very late stage, giving the IEC almost no time to really do all this work that people asked them to do. Over 19 million ballots that had to be printed, voter education of teaching almost 27 million people how the new system is going to work, which isn't fully part of their mandate. The IEC's mandate is voter education, not civic participation. But we left this on their table because we've just left it to political parties in the past. Now suddenly, as the public, we were saying, well, where is the IEC? And I think that they were trying to do a good job with that, but there was so much time constraints because of the way that politicians have written done it. So going forward, because I know that there's going to be a discussion on was it even worth it to have independence because no independence made it, it was a confusing system. Going forward, I think it's going to be important for us as civil society, us as normal citizens, to now actually participate in the legislation that comes out from what there's no doubt about it. There's going to be political parties that are there who are going to want to hold their share. In fact, I think tomorrow is the last day that you can give your input into the new COPTA bill. And part of that speaks to what the professor was saying around should we have thresholds now for political parties that are going into parliament? Should we have longer times in between when the election is declared and political parties have to form a government? But you will find that maybe it's going to be 5 of us in this room that are firstly aware that we can do that, or that are going to submit. And then in 5 years' time, when that bill has been passed and we now have a sudden need for an election, we're all going to say, when did this happen? So I think it's important that we also participate far more, otherwise we're going to have these same problems every time. So just to take it firstly back before I give what I think happened, a lot of it was also just because of the way that political parties in parliament in the last administration behaved to try and make it easier for them not to contest with new parties or not to contest with independents. And that's why we had these laws about a new party must have so many signatures to be able to get into parliament. And then on top of that, they don't give the IEC any teeth to do anything. So there are political parties that we know haven't been declaring who their funders are. There are political parties that we know maybe there was some dubiousness around the signatures. The IEC only has a mandate so far with that. How are they supposed to actually do anything beyond what their actual legislative powers are? And those parties will sit there and they'll fight about, oh, you guys don't declare, and then, so what? So we also have, I think, a problem where we don't have even the accountability that we've given our own institutions to be able to take these things on. Okay, then just going into, and I'll be quick now, what I think was credible. free and fair elections doesn't mean perfect elections. There's no elections anywhere in the world where you're not going to have some teething problems, some things that have happened. Which is why it was important when the IEC put out the calls, can we have observers, have party agents been trained, that if you wanted to be a part of that you did it. And I mean, my organization, which is Groundwork Collective, we put out a call to the public, we did the training, we worked with the IEC, particularly because we knew in this election there were going to be so many different issues, like the fact that there were 3 ballots, new parties, independents, and all of that, and we wanted to make sure that we were a part of that. And we found that the elections, by and large, were free and fair. Nobody was denied the ability to actually contest, no political parties were disenfranchised in any way. There was fairness across the board in terms of how the operational systems went out. That doesn't mean that everything was perfect. Yes, we acknowledge the administrative issues that happened, maybe issues of funding, some technology issues, and those are all the things that we've supplied back to the IEC because you can only do it and then be better for the next time. But even on the day, we had access to presiding officers and people that we were able to call from the IEC to be able to say, here's an issue. The people that complained afterwards, even after they've been given a chance to have a period for their grievances to be aired, I think were quite mischievous in this election, and I think that there were some other reasons that they wanted for people to believe that the elections were free and unfair. And I see now that one of the court cases that was against ASI has been withdrawn yesterday because, quite frankly, there was no evidence. And to say that there was one person somewhere that maybe their vote didn't get counted, maybe that's true. Does it have a material outcome on everything? Were your party agents there? Is there any other form of proof that was needed? Sure, then you can speak to the IEC, that votes will be counted. But the whole scale nature in which things were happening, I think was mischievous. I can see Tobani here seeming to disagree with me. But if there had been proof, then where is it, quite frankly? And for those of us who were observers on the actual day, and Groundwork Collective had thousands of observers, you could see that there were some discrepancies that were coming in. You could give that to the presiding officers, and things were rationalized, and I think that they were reconciled at the day before that. And we checked it fastidiously to see if every single result slip that we got as Groundwork Collective actually looked like the one that the IEC did. And in every single instance, at least in our case, that was what had happened. I think it's important though, Oti, we need to talk about constitutional illiteracy in this country. USPA refers to pure maths and maths lit. But it's true. Abantu don't even know how the formulas are done. So you saw some political parties that should know better, considering that they are our leaders, making blunders of how they think actual seats are allocated. And what that tells you is that Abantu, who we have elected to lead us, themselves don't even know the rules of the game that they are playing. And that should be cause for concern for all of us. So I think going forward, what we really need to advocate for, what we're doing is things like civics in schools. People should know this information long before they even have to start their voting, so that BAS will see what actually is supposed to happen in an election, how things work, how the government works. But we also need to make sure that in this dispensation of this 7th administration, let's get it actually as something that the education department is going to run with. It can't just be civil society, it can't just be the IEC or political parties doing the education. It needs to be something that can be across the board. All children should be able to access the information, so when they become adults, they're actually civically literate about what they're doing. And I think some of the issues that we see that come up will be solved in parts because people will actually know what's happening. I'll leave it there for now, but I do want to say just lastly to Prof's point on the youth education. There is something very wrong with the fact that we had the highest amount of registration in these elections, but the lowest turnout since 2004. We need to address what is happening in that space. Yes, youth apathy is one of them, and part of that is also because of the way political parties behave. But it's between why we can have high registration and why people don't come out. And if we continue this way, all we're going to do is have a more weakened democracy, less representation, and quite frankly, blind endorsements by people that actually do go out and vote, even though they don't reflect necessarily everyone that's registered. So for me, I think in this administration, the 3 things are basic civics. We need to participate, and we need to make sure that we're taking legislation and making it our own, because we are allowed to, and that's part of our constitution. But also, importantly, we need to figure out why we have that gap.
Thank you so much, Mbali. And I want to bring you in here, Tobani, especially on the first couple of points that Mbali made about, the lack of you would say, initiative by the citizens to make themselves aware about what is happening. We saw a lot of cases as part of the observer mission where Section 24A was an issue and people said, I didn't know, I didn't understand. With that in mind, Tobani, I want to know from you, where are we in our realization of liberation? You know, I mentioned before beginning, starting off, we said, you know, 2024 is going to be our 1994. And I posed the question is that although seemingly we now have a coalition government, we don't just have one political party that is in charge, seemingly, I put that in quotation marks and I put that very loosely, but I really want to know from you, with that, what is the change that we're expecting? Are we closer or are we further away to that realization of change or of freedom that we so speak about?
No, thank you. I don't know if this is on.
It's on.
No, Sanborn. I mean, a lot has been said. My name has been mentioned a few times. Maybe let me put it this way. My name is Sobani Sigalala. And one of the things that maybe is that I'm a contrarian. I'm from the margins. And one of the things that I'm going to say, I'm going to do here today, is to say my thoughts as they are. I believe in discourse. I believe that ideas must be thrown in the fire and the best ideas must prevail. That's what I believe. I believe that society must have different views. But the best views are the views that we throw in the fire of discourse. And let the ideas contend for themselves. There must be no idea that there are views that are problematic. Right? And for me, that's the first point. I think we must start there. Because we seem to be a country that is so afraid of particular ideas that we are so much want to have a discourse that is controlled, that has that you can't say particular things, because if you say particular things, then maybe you are anti-constitution, maybe you are anti-democracy, maybe, you see, it becomes problematic. In fact, we have a constitution that upholds our right to be expressive. But we then have a situation where there are views that we don't want to hear, because they destabilize a particular stable, peaceful situation that we have built in our minds and in our heads, which does not exist. The truth of the matter is that society is polarized, that society has got different views, that society is contending with real political issues, and we must allow the space that in spaces of discourse, these ideas are then ventilated. So that we don't project an idea that says this singular view is the most correct. I thought I must start there, because unfortunately, in the years that I've been doing what I'm doing, and in the years that I've been politically conscious and politically active, I've always insisted on this particular point. Those who have respected me on the basis that I stand for my own views and I can defend them. And I must always try to do that, so that we encourage more and more people to come out strongly on what they believe in. That's out of the way. You asked a very difficult question, Tabi, of the idea of how close we are to our liberation and whatnot. Maybe I'm going to try to say so many things that I'm going to answer your question. Maybe I won't be able to answer your question directly. And the reason for that is that even the concept of liberation itself is a contested concept. It's a concept that has got different definitions to different people. Right? In South Africa, for example, there are people who believe 1994 was a liberation moment. Right? And then we can't come in 2024 and ask from those people how close or how far are we to our liberation, because they believe it has already happened. But there are already people who believe, and there's many of them, maybe I'm one of them, who believe that 1994 was a moment to breathe, to struggle and to push for liberation on a different terrain that allows us to breathe. Now, these different views will arrive where you have a different answer to a question that seems so simple. So what I'm going to do is maybe, in reflection on these elections, try to arrive where you see where I stand in relation to the question. There are many things that have been said, of course. I mean, if we can't do a little thing, we can't reflect on the state of our states, and it's a problematic thing to say, maybe, but we must interrogate our state as we have seen it since 1994. And if we interrogate our state properly, in relation, of course, to the elections of today, maybe Prof. Breakfast will arrive at a point that says, in these elections, and maybe in elections before this, there's a very deliberate thing the electorate is saying in their critique of the Rainbow Nation project of 1994. In that, maybe the electorate is saying the dream, the facade of the Rainbow Nation project is finally maybe what you call waning away from their minds. And that they are finally being able to really confront political situations as they happen. And in that way, then we are voting a particular way. Where I'm differing with some people, and of course maybe Prof. Breakfast and others, is the analysis of the 2004-2009 elections. And I'll tell you, Prof. Breakfast, why I disagree. Is that because, and I think my friends will know, I've pumped to them this idea for the longest time, especially since that announcement, of course, of 16 December, which really changed these politics for many people. I mean, for many people, they were guaranteed parliamentary seats until the 16 December announcement. Because that 16 December announcement will lead to another analysis I'm going to give on the idea of strongman politics and politics of personalities in Africa and with more focus in South Africa. But let me go back to why I disagree with some of you in 2004. 2004, in 1999, the ANC gets 2/3 majority, right? But it's got, in terms of actual votes, it's on the lowest voter turnout. Right? So it got the highest percentage ever it has ever got since 1994. But if you look at the numbers are almost equal to 2019 and 2024. Right? The only time that the ANC, in terms of actual vote, gets high numbers is 1994 and 2009 and 2009. Right? So the idea that the percentages of 2004 are so impactful. For me, for these elections, I always say, go look at the 2009 elections. Before we went to the ballot, I said, people, go look at the 2009 elections. Because the 2009 elections are going to maybe relate to what I'm going to say now. The idea of how much personalities have been important in South African politics. And in particular, the personality of one former president, Jacob Zuma. Let me tell you, look at this. In 2009, for example, Jacob Zuma came into the ballot, right, as leader of the ANC. Many of you either went to the ballot because you disliked him and you didn't want him to be president. And some of you went because you liked him so much you wanted him to be president. Go ahead and look at the voter turnout. Right? It increases almost on both sides. People who were voting against him, their numbers will improve. Which then meant that his percentage, right, in terms of the percentage of the votes, is decreased because also the voter turnout has increased. But in terms of the votes that he got, it's so much closer to the votes that Nelson Mandela got in 1994. He was a likable politician. And this also played a role this year. This is why so many people, I mean, whether you like him or not, it's really none of my business. I don't care much about feelings and emotions. I care about real political phenomena. 16 December, Jacob Zuma makes that announcement. These elections, close to 2 million votes of a party with 6 months, with so much problems that we can all see. I mean, really, if we're going to do analysis of the organization and have a rational vote, maybe some people will not vote for the party. But because of who was leading it, or was the face of it, 2 million votes went for the party. And that is something that we need to really reflect on how much personalities play a role in politics. You can have, I mean, there are political parties who had the best funding in these elections, who had the best organizing in terms of how much they were organized in terms of their election machinery and their contact with the people. But they didn't get the votes. Some of them is because they don't have strong characters that people know. Because people will not stop Mbali at asking who party X is. They will then ask who's the leader. And who's that? Where does it come from? So some people failed at that because no one knew who were there. No one knew who they are and where they come from. Jacob Zuma didn't need to tell people these nice things we always say here of manifestos and what to call. He just here to tell them that I'm here, vote for the party, and 2 million people voted. Of course, I simplified, but I'm just making a point of saying how much personalities play a role in South African politics, and they've shifted so much out. I know maybe I've got 3 minutes left now, so I'm going to try to be, I'll try to be as quickly as possible. One other thing, before the other things we can speak about later, is that one other thing that I think emerges for me here is the problematics around proxy representation. So this idea that we vote, I think the colleagues were touching on that also, that we vote, and then after we've voted and results are out, it's almost as if our view stops mattering. Stops being of value, and then some people sit in hotels and in some clandestine places and they make decisions because we've almost given them a proxy to make decisions on our behalf. I have a problem of elite pets. I have a problem, and I'm supposed to say this, and I think I've said this before, I said it last week. At the altar of state administration, ideology and political belief and principle is the ultimate sacrifice. I think we saw in these elections that people we never thought they would work together, the justifications of why some people were working together were no longer about the beliefs, the principles, the history, and the ideology of parties. It was a matter of who best will give me what I want, which is all what all politicians want, access to state administration. And if this party X can give me state administration access without complications, that's where I'm going. And whether or not the people who voted and the members of parties agree with that almost doesn't matter, because in South Africa and in Africa we have given this idea that there is no critical voter base. Once we have voted, everyone, those people can make decisions on our behalf. The last point is we also have the emergence of the phenomenon and how it was so powerful, the idea of the view of the markets. I have a problem with how much the market is being centralized. I don't want to enter into a discussion of whether the market is important or not in others, but I'm bringing it here because I think it's something to reflect on. Our constitution, Prof. Breakfast, only speaks about popular democracy. It speaks about me and you going to vote and through that forming government. Once we have voted and votes are out, suddenly there is something that comes out there that's got feelings that can see, that sees what is good for society, that is called the market, and that is what decides. I have a problem with that. Also because this type of states that we have built in Africa, in South Africa in particular, is a hands-off state. The hands-off state, I mean, it's a state that does not almost try to intervene in the tyranny of the markets on the people. Of course, if we have time, we'll go on an analysis of who really is the market, what are really the markets, and what is their interest. We don't have that time because of how much longer I've spoken. The states that must emerge and against the states that is going to emerge. The states that must emerge in terms of the voter turnout and the criticism and how much, as I said in the beginning, the Rainbow Nation project has been almost criticized, is a state that is developmental, the state that is hands-on, that intervenes on the tyranny of the market, on the working class. That's the state that must emerge, right? It's a state that almost is what we would call a people's state. That's the state that must emerge. And unfortunately, maybe I'm here to tell you that's not the state that's going to emerge. The state that's going to emerge is what many brokers are speaking about, and what has been happening since 1994 is a heads-off state, is a deregulated state, the state that spends much less on important things, the state that doesn't have almost power to intervene and defend the working class on the tyranny of the market. That's the type of state that's going to emerge because of the political arrangement that's going to make. There are a lot of things that I could have said, but 10 minutes is such a short time if you are dealing with it.
Now do you see why I said 10 minutes? Alright, thank you so much, Shobani. Prof, I want to bring you in here before we break for a short comfort break here. Prof, moving forward, you spoke a lot about the governance of South Africa going forward. I just want to know from you, since now we have this GNU political parties, and we understand that previously opposition parties played a huge role in strengthening our democracy. So I'd like to know from you, since now they are seemingly in cahoots, in bed together, what does that then mean for the opposition and the role that they play in South Africa?
Yeah, I think thank goodness we have parties like the MK, and the EFF alongside ATM. And actually, we have not joined forces with the ANC and the likes. So that will maintain the conception of separation of powers or checks and balances in terms of holding the executive institution accountable, which is good. Even what beats me is the fact that the EFF and MK, they are part of the opposition pact, but at the same time, they are having negotiations with the ANC, meaning that even themselves, they want to be part of that arrangement. So I think that all is not lost because we still have them.
We still have them. Okay, I see Bali shaking her head, and I'll give you a moment to respond. But in your response, Bali, I also want you to then look at, as we move forward then to 2026 local government elections, now we have these political parties that are in cahoots together, that are seemingly being drowned by, they're under the leadership of the ANC. ANC holds majority seats in terms of its cabinet. What does that then mean for the strength of those political parties come 2026?
Thanks. Yeah, Bonanza was a quick big man. Elections. So, I agree with Prof that it's good that we have political parties that have stayed in opposition as such. My issue is I don't think any of these political parties are particularly strong at being in opposition. They don't really know how to do it. And the one that we have, which is now opposition in KZN, I think only one person in the entire political party has ever sat either as a councillor, an MPL, or any form of government. And that's not to say that you can't have new people that come into the political arena, but it's so important to know how that political arena operates. And even if they are good, it's still going to take them a long time before they really get a sense of how it works and then are able to drive it. In the meantime, the parties that have been established are already together. They're going to run circles around them. And those parties themselves are not even good. And let me just use the names of the parties. The ANC doesn't know how to be in opposition. The DA does, but now that the DA is subsumed by the ANC, who's going to be left to really drive the agendas, to really drive issues? I've never seen, I think the EFF's done 3 sort of bills that they've ever put across in the National Assembly in the 10 years that they've been around. And a lot of the issues have been very I don't think we can leave it up to these political parties alone, because they just don't have the muscle memory of being able to do it. And it is hard work being in opposition because you're trying to box but you also really have no power. In terms of 2026 and the parties that are minorities that have been subsumed, I think if they're not able to differentiate themselves, so I said or MEC in a party that got 1 seat, if you're not able to use that platform in the next 2 years to show what your party is going to do with it, I don't think that you're going to be able to have the ability to also have the machinery on the ground to actually run an election. We've seen that there are parties where the leader is now going to be a member of the cabinet, for example. If that party doesn't have abantu who are organizing on the ground, if Uli Denge or if Uli is not the one addressing, I think those parties are going to disappear. And they must have made that tactical choice when they decided to go into it. And this is why Utubani and Prof are right, that some of them were thinking more about rather than the long game plan of actually growing their political parties. Well, maybe they think that they can do something good, but I think they also underestimate how hard it is to be in positions where you're going to now be running an entire ministry and also thinking what you're going to be able to be opening up a branch and making sure that your party is working if you are not there. And I think that what they're going to find is that they're going to be subsumed and their parties will die. The ones that are clever are the ones that are going to be able to be in this arrangement but still try to use the platforms to highlight their brand, as Tobani says, so that the next time that they go to elections, a few more people say, oh, Rwanda, I've seen him on TV, maybe Kontai show that sense, because Tobani is absolutely right. In South Africa, we still have strong personality politics. And if that people don't know, even if you have the best manifesto, it's unlikely that you're going to do very well. So if they're smart, the ones that have money to it must use that platform to really brand themselves, do good work, and show South Africans why they went into this union and what they could do without them. But I think it's going to be a very tricky time, and I think the real test of this GNU will be in 2026, because I think even parties like the DA are going to be in trouble because they put all their people now into these positions, and I don't think they have the depth of leadership left behind, whether in terms of people that will be running the caucuses or people on the ground that are going to be doing it. And as a party that has the second amount of votes, if they're in trouble, then the smaller parties are in more trouble.
All right, thank you, Bali. So, Bali, I want to bring you in here. You've often spoken a lot about legitimacy. I want to take you back to last year's Civic Education Conference. I want to take you back to that. You spoke a lot about legitimacy, and you said that, you know, if a majority of the people, citizenry, don't go out there and vote, you know, we then start to question the legitimacy of that government because of that aspect of citizen participation. Looking then now with the formation of the GNU and how it's been formed, we've been sidelined from all those talks. I'm asking you then about the legitimacy then of the GNU as a government, since we haven't had an opportunity to input and say, go for it, or, you know.
My first reaction is that, first of all, I believe we must stop using a concept that we don't understand. Yes, ma'am. This government of national unity thing, it's nice when we are out there because we must keep the time. I mean, in media, when they ask you our GNU, you must run with it. We can't go on the conceptual problem. Here we are in a discourse place. First of all, take GNU away. Let's speak coalition, right? The governing coalition. Because if we are saying it's government of national unity, then why are some people standing on podiums very clear on who must be excluded? If it's a government of national unity. Because the government of national unity would have meant we all didn't get a majority, let's all meet and form a government. But that's not what happened. There were people standing on podiums and saying, we are interested in the government of national unity, but if Mbali is not there, Mbali must be excluded. So the idea that it's government of national unity is problematic. Even, of course, if we look at the idea of whether we have a nation in South Africa, whether we have unity that can exist in South Africa, it's another issue. So for me, if we speak of it as a government of national unity, it's already illegitimate because of the barriers that have been put in place for everyone to really be involved and unite in the sake of the nation. Whatever the nation is, I do not know. But if it's a coalition, government coalition as it is, then it almost has a bit of legitimacy within its own circles. The problem that it has, it doesn't have, it almost at the beginning, I don't know now, and I said to some people, some of my friends who are in that space, I said to them, when comrades don't be too angry. You can see you are going to you're going to come down once the government starts being formed. Because there was a very big furor and a big noise on who so and so was going into coalition with, and people almost rejecting it. But now people are happy that so and so is in government. So you see, the legitimacy of that government has almost changed because they almost have been explained to and have had time to react. Which is why I agree with Prof. Breakfast. The idea of 2 weeks to form a government in this situation, excuse my French, is nonsense. Because then you are saying these politicians, without consideration of a political program, without consideration of their own constituencies, without consideration of the voters of South Africa, they must just go in a room somewhere in 2 weeks and decide the government. I don't agree with that. But of course, because the constitution is there, we had to say, rush and make a decision. Because in fact, you have waited 10 years not to change this clause. Because as some people, as Prof. Breakfast was saying, we built a constitution on the basis that this situation will be like this forever. We didn't build a constitution on the ideal situation, on a situation that does not exist. We built constitutions and we build legislation on the basis of what is happening now and not what is going to happen in the future. Unfortunately, in Africa and everywhere, liberation movements have got 2 decades of power. Everywhere. After 2 decades, there is a question mark around their continued governments. What the African National Congress has done in this election, of course helped by the DA, which was so much help back of being able to have access to state administration, right? And unfortunately, for example, the DA, and I might make this point, sorry, the Democratic Alliance, for example, does not govern KwaZulu-Natal if it's not part of a coalition that includes the ANC. It's not part of the conversation. Because on the other side, the EFF and the MK don't want to speak to them. So they had, in one way or another, to push for this, but push for this at the exclusion of the others, because if it's not the case, then they don't govern in Gauteng, they don't govern in KwaZulu-Natal, they are so desperate for that possibility. So you have all these problems, which for me then say, if we continue on this trajectory, and the ANC continues to try and legitimize itself in the base that says every other liberation movement in the world has either used the gun or the rigging of elections, or maybe it happened, I don't know. The idea of the guns or the rigging of elections to force the goodwill of the people and be able to continue to govern, or maybe you die what the ANC has done. Because of course we were colonized by the British, you enter into diplomatic politics, you don't force anyone, you appear to be diplomatic, you appear to be conversing, so that the people continue to say, hey, but the ANC is not so bad, yes?
Okay, all right, let's park it there for now, Zobani. So what we're going to do now is we are going to take a 25-minute break for tea, right? So that's what's going to happen. We'll take that break for tea and we'll come back at 25 to 12. When we come back, I ask, talk nomakhelwane wakho, if you have an opportunity to do so, you know, it's a time for discourse. Let's talk about what our panelists have said, and if there are any clarity-seeking questions, that would be then the time for us to, you know, pose questions to our panelists, which will also be joined by Mrs. Masina. Thank you so much.
Thank you.